The rain hadn't stopped in 3 days. It came down in hard, slanted sheets that turned Fort Lincoln's gravel paths into dark gray rivers, soaking boots and blurring vision. A dozen recruits jogged across the parade field, their uniforms clinging. Like wet paper, every muscle screaming as they pushed through their 5th mile. Behind them, the echo of a quiet presence moved unnoticed. A man with a mop and an old canvas raincoat. Elijah Kane, the base janitor. No one knew where he came from. No one remembered when he started working there. He just was. A fixture. Like the rusted benches or the cracks in the gym wall. He swept the floors, replaced light bulbs, and occasionally offered advice that made people uncomfortable because it was too accurate to be coincidence. "Yo, janitor?" Private Cole Evans called, gasping for air as he slowed his pace. "Think you could mop this storm up next?" The other recruits laughed, grateful for the break in tension. The janitor paused, turned, and looked at Cole through the veil of rain. There was no anger, no smile, just a long, searching glance that felt like being peeled open. "You're running." "Uneven," Kane said, "left leg's lagging. Probably an old injury. Keep favoring it and you'll tear your ACL in 2 weeks." Cole's face dropped. "What?" Kane was already walking away, mop handle tapping against the concrete. Later, in the mess hall, Brooke Hastings stirred her soup without eating it. "Who is that guy? He's everywhere. I swear he was in the armory this morning, fixing a fuse." "Derek." Powell shrugged. "I heard he used to be a SEAL. Or maybe CIA. My roommate said he's got some weird tattoo behind his ear. Like classified level weird. Or maybe he's just a janitor," Brooke said, her voice sharp, almost defensive. Not everyone has some tragic, heroic backstory. But she kept glancing toward the corner of the room, where Kane sat alone, with a cup of black coffee, watching, listening, never speaking, unless spoken to. He'd patched a wall in the simulator room the week before. Rebuilt the obstacle course bridge when engineering took too long. Replaced the entire water line under the West Barracks over a weekend. Nobody asked him to. He just did it. Quietly. Efficiently. And people started noticing. Not the officers. Not at first. But the recruits, those who were always watching, always trying to figure out who to follow, began to sense something in the way he moved. Something cold and dangerous, like the weight in the air before a storm got. Then came the weapons assessment. "You're not soldiers yet," barked Drill Sergeant Monroe as the recruits lined up at the long-range field. "Today we see which of you knows how to breathe under pressure. Quarter-mile target, 1 shot, center mass or you fail." Cole stepped up first. Missed by inches. Brooke held her breath, exhaled like she'd seen in YouTube tutorials. Still missed. Derek's bullet clipped the edge. Closer, but not good enough. The line grew more tense as failure mounted. Then, a slow voice from behind the barricade. "Mind if I try?" Everyone turned. It was Kane, still in his raincoat. No rank. No invitation. Just holding a rifle, one of the older M24s, from the rack nobody used anymore. Monroe started to bark. "This is a restricted," but Commander Riley stepped out of nowhere. Her eyes fixed on Kane. "Let him." The recruits froze. Kane adjusted. The rifle with hands that didn't shake. Lay prone. Sighed. And fired. The target's center exploded in a cloud of red dust. "Holy," Cole whispered. Riley's face didn't move. "Elijah Kane, former Delta, call sign, Ghost 6. Brooke's jaw dropped. "Delta Force? But what's he doing here?" "Disappearing," Riley replied. "After Operation Emberfall, he asked to be reassigned. Not promoted, not decorated, just out." Nobody spoke. The man they mocked, ignored, forgotten, had just done what none of them could. That night, The barracks were silent. No games, no jokes. Just the sound of rain and young minds trying to reconcile everything they'd seen. Cole lay in his bunk, staring at the ceiling. He's a legend. And we didn't even see him. He didn't want to be seen, Derek said. Maybe he just wanted peace. Brooke turned the other way, clutching her pillow. She didn't sleep. Not really. The next morning, Kane was at the edge of the field again. No mop, just standing with his hands in his pockets. A few recruits approached. Tentative, curious. Will you train us? Cole asked. Kane looked at them, rain dripping from the brim of his cap. Why? Cole hesitated. Because we want to be better. Kane's eyes narrowed. No, you want to look better. Be respected. That's not enough. He walked away. But the next day, he was there again. And the next at first, only 3 recruits showed up. Then 5. Then 12. He never said yes. He never gave them a schedule. He just showed them how to move like shadows, how to feel terrain, how to silence fear with breath. Brooke, who had never even camped before basic, crawled through mud without flinching. Derek dropped 20 pounds, but doubled his endurance. Cole stopped trying to impress anyone and started listening. They were changing, and Kane, who said little and expected much, watched every step like he was measuring something invisible. That week, Brooke found an old dossier under her cot. Slipped. There silently. No name. Just a black and white photo. Kane, 15 years younger, crouched in sand, rifle in hand, eyes cold. The caption read, "Asset lost, presumed dead." Her fingers trembled. Outside, the rain finally stopped. And Kane stood beneath the flagpole, staring at nothing. Watching. Waiting. Something was coming. And Fort Lincoln didn't know it yet, but Kane did. A gunshot shattered the morning stillness. A single, clean crack that echoed off the barracks and froze every recruit in place. It wasn't a drill. Cole Evans dropped his tray mid-step, scrambled toward the window, and saw smoke curling from beyond the south fence. Brooke Hastings was already reaching for her phone, but there was no signal. The base-wide blackout had begun 3 seconds after the shot. The lights dimmed. The hum of power cut out like a snapped wire. Red emergency strobes bathed Fort Lincoln in a slow, blinking heartbeat. Then came the second shot. Closer and louder. "Sergeant." Monroe's voice bellowed over the intercom, sharp with panic. "All units to shelter. Lockdown protocol Charlie. Hostile breach in Sector 4. Chaos erupted. Doors slammed. Boots thundered down hallways. Officers barked contradictory orders, while half-dressed recruits stumbled out of their bunks, unsure if they were part of the fight or just in the way of it. But one man wasn't running. Kane stood at the end of the barracks hallway, calm and still. His face gave nothing away, but his eyes, those eyes had narrowed. He knew. He turned and walked, not rushed but purposeful, toward the south fence. Toward the smoke. Derek Powell burst out behind him, lacing up his boots as he ran. "Sir, wait. We're supposed to shelter." Kane didn't slow. "You shelter if you want to. They're not here for you." "Then who?" Kane stopped under a flickering exit sign and glanced back. "Me." Then he vanished into the storm of noise and red light. The breach came fast. A delivery truck, rigged with stolen base decals, had plowed through the west checkpoint during the shift change. 5 minutes of confusion was all it needed to unload 6 armed mercenaries, dressed like contractors. They didn't speak. They didn't give demands. They just moved like machines toward the comm center. One guard tried to stop them. He was dead before his rifle hit the floor. Inside the admin wing, Commander Riley stood over a live feed. Static choked the cameras, but what little she could see chilled her blood. "Ghost protocol is active," she said. "Get Kane, now." The young lieutenant beside her looked pale. He's already out there, ma'am. Riley's voice dropped to a whisper. God help whoever sent those men. Outside, Kane moved like a shadow. No armor, no helmet. Just an old utility knife in one hand and a sidearm he'd taken from a fallen MP. He didn't run. He didn't shout. He moved between lights, between sound, a ghost gliding through the familiar architecture of Fort Lincoln like it was a memory. Etched in muscle. Two of the intruders held the Eastcombe station. Kane watched from the roof of the adjacent building, counting their steps, waiting for the rhythm. 1, 2, turn. He dropped silently. The first went down without a sound, the blade slicing through the rain-slicked night. The second turned too late. Kane fired once. A muffled thump. 2 down. 4 to go. Back at the barracks, Brooke was pacing, her fingers twitching with every distant echo of gunfire. We have to do something. We were told to shelter, Cole said, but his voice had lost all certainty. Kane's out there alone. Exactly, Kane, not us. He's the guy with a kill record classified by the Pentagon. He trailed off as a low rumble shook the floor. Brooke moved to the window. A column of black smoke was rising from the motor pool. Those weren't just here for a break-in, she said. They're destroying infrastructure. Sabotage. Derek stood, shoving his gear into a pack. We know this base. We know these halls. And we've been training with him. If we sit here, we're just watching it all burn. Brooke met Cole's eyes. You wanted to be a soldier, right? Here's your test. A moment passed, then Cole nodded. Let's move. They slipped out through the rear exit, staying low, avoiding cameras and open spaces. Kane had taught them that. Stay behind the sound. Never be the loudest part of the room. It wasn't much, but it kept them alive. Kane reached the Central Coms building just as the remaining 4 intruders regrouped. They moved like they'd trained for this exact layout. Like they had blueprints. Inside, one of them planted a charge on the main relay. Kane threw a rock to the far side of the courtyard, peeled off to investigate. He struck the first from the shadows. The second turned. Kane's pistol clicked empty. Heartbeat passed. The merc raised his weapon. Then a brick hit his face. He went down hard. Kane turned. Brooke stood 10 feet away, breath ragged, a second brick in her hand. Derek and Cole emerged behind her, armed with batons and borrowed pistols. What are you doing here? Kane asked, his voice rough. You train us, Cole said. You don't teach ghosts unless you expect them to fight. Kane looked at them. These wide-eyed, shivering recruits. They weren't ready. But they were willing. And sometimes, that was all it took. Kane handed Cole a fresh mag. You see the guy planting the charge? Cole nodded. Back hallway. Tall, fast. Good, that's yours. Disable, not kill unless you have to. Derek, flank right with me. Brooke watched the exits. Don't let anyone out. She nodded, already moving into position. In the space of a single breath, Kane's squad engaged. It wasn't clean. It wasn't perfect, but it worked. When the smoke cleared and the alarm stopped, 6 bodies lay unconscious or bound. And Fort Lincoln still stood. Commander Riley arrived with the MPs moments later. She didn't speak, just stared at Kane. Then, the recruits. You broke lockdown protocol, she said finally. Brooke stepped forward. Yes, ma'am. And saved this base. Are they finished? Dismissed. The recruits stared, confused. That's it? Cole asked. Kane turned away. You passed. Passed what? Derek asked. Kane looked over his shoulder. The test I didn't tell you is coming. Then he walked into the night, leaving behind more than smoke and silence. He left behind soldiers, real ones, and they weren't done yet. The moon hung low over Fort Lincoln, swollen and pale, like an eye that refused to blink. Midnight crept in without fanfare. No alarms, no warnings, just the dry hush of wind skimming across the rooftops. But Kane felt them before they arrived. A subtle change in the air pressure. The birds went silent. The shadows moved wrong. He stood at the edge of the motor pool, dressed in black fatigues that bore no insignia, boots planted shoulder-width apart. Behind him, 12 recruits, no, not recruits anymore, his unit. Their faces were painted with ash to kill the shine. Their hearts beat slow. Their eyes locked on him like gravity itself had shifted. 4 targets confirmed, Kane said quietly. 1 inside the perimeter already. 1 covering the north tower. 2 approaching from the tree line, southeast. That leaves at least 2 more unaccounted for. Brooke crouched beside the fuel drums, her breathing calm. Same pattern as the last breach? No, Kane replied. This time they're not. Here to sabotage. They're here to kill. Me, if possible. All of you, if necessary. Cole tightened his grip on the silenced sidearm Kane had personally modified. So we do what we trained for. Kane nodded once. This isn't training anymore. From the guard shack at the far end, a single light blinked out. That was the signal dot. No words followed. No last-minute pep talks. The unit split in 3, melting into the darkness like they'd always belonged to it. Brooke moved first low, swift, her route precise. She'd memorized every crevice of the motor pool wall. She scaled the drainage pipe in silence, leveling her rifle just as the sniper in the tower raised his scope. She fired once. A soft pop-dot target. Down. She exhaled but didn't smile. Derek and Cole circled wide, sweeping toward the barracks wing where heat signatures showed movement. Derek signaled 2 hostiles at the side door. 1 scanning the entry, 1 adjusting a charge on the hinges. Cole took the flanker with a flash grenade, non-lethal, but disorienting. Derek surged forward and dropped the second, with a perfectly placed elbow to the throat. The man hit the ground, twitching, eyes wide in shock. Didn't even hear me coming. Derek muttered back at the center yard. Kane slipped between storage containers toward the command building, where the final approach team was trying to breach the server hub. 1 had already entered through the rear exit, likely an inside job. Kane stepped over a tripwire, lifted the metal hatch behind the generator, and emerged behind them. 3 seconds to run, he said aloud. They spun. Too late. Kane moved like time was bending around him. 1 step, 2 shots. The first man crumpled. The second drew a blade and lunged. Kane didn't hesitate. He twisted sideways, caught the attacker's wrist mid-swing, and drove his forearm upward into the man's throat. The merc collapsed, choking, grasping at air. Then silence again. For a moment, Kane stood alone in the courtyard, heart steady, rain starting to fall in light taps on his shoulders. He looked up at the sky. That's when the last one came. Not through the fences. Not through the air ducts. He stepped into the light like he owned it. Tall, scarred, wearing the same patch Kane once wore. Delta Force, Ghost Unit. The man's voice was low, unhurried. They said you disappeared. Kane's expression didn't change. They say a lot of things. I didn't think you'd raise a unit, the man said, circling him. You always preferred working alone. I didn't raise them, Kane said. They raised themselves. I just reminded them who they are. The scarred man laughed, a sharp sound that echoed like broken glass. Still speaking in riddles. Then he drew his blade. It was the same model Kane carried. And that meant one thing. They'd been trained by the same hand. Kane didn't flinch. What's the contract? You, the man said simply. And your shadows. Kane's eyes flicked. Upward Brooke, now watching from the tower. Cole and Derek were hidden near the edge of the west corridor. The others were in position. Kane slowly drew his own knife. Then finish it. The fight was fast and brutal. There were no flourishes. No wasted motion. Just two soldiers perfectly trained, perfectly lethal, moving with terrifying efficiency. Steel clashed. Blood hit the concrete. Kane staggered back as the blade nicked his ribs. He retaliated with a knee to the man's chest, followed by a blow to the jaw that cracked like dry wood. The other man grinned, teeth pink. "You're slower," Kane grunted. "I'm heavier with purpose." Then the signal flare Brooke fired. A warning shot. The rest of the unit converged, but Kane raised a hand. "No, mine." The scarred man lunged. Kane sidestepped, grabbed his wrist mid-attack, and twisted. The knife clattered to the ground. Kane drove his opponent down, pinned, his face into the dirt, and whispered into his ear, "You were the best of us. And you sold it all for money." The man laughed, blood in his mouth. "You think they're ready? You think they'll survive the next wave?" Kane looked to his unit, dirty, tired, eyes bright with purpose. "Yes," he said. Then he stood. Brooke approached, breath catching. "Was that the last one?" Kane shook his head. "No, that was the beginning." Far off, in the still of the trees beyond the base fence, a single red light blinked once, then disappeared. And somewhere deep inside Fort Lincoln, a secure phone began to ring. They stood in the rain, ankle-deep in mud, staring at the smoking remnants of the comm center. Sirens had faded. The base was secure. But nothing felt normal anymore. Cole's hands still trembled, even as he holstered the sidearm Kane had given him. Brooke hadn't blinked in over a minute, her soaked hair plastered to her cheeks, eyes locked on the man who had led them through chaos like it was memory. Derek exhaled slowly, his chest rising and falling with disbelief, adrenaline, and a dawning sense of something unfamiliar, respect for himself. Kane hadn't said a word since the last intruder went down. He stood under the dripping edge of the building's overhang, arms folded, face unreadable, as military police moved in behind him. He didn't move when Commander Riley stepped into view. Her boots crunched broken glass. She surveyed the scene. Bodies detained, sabotage prevented, 3 recruits still alive. "You broke every rule in the book," she said, her tone flat. "Disobeyed lockdown. Used live weapons without authorization. Endangered yourselves and others." Brooke straightened, her spine. "Permission to speak, ma'am?" "No, but Kane spoke anyway. They followed me." Riley's gaze shifted. "Did they?" "No orders, no promises, just instinct. And guts." There was a silence between them, heavy with old history. Finally, Riley nodded. "Get them cleaned up." As the MPs moved in, Kane turned his back and walked away. They didn't see him for days after that. The recruits returned to training, but something had changed. Drill Sergeant Monroe didn't mock them anymore. He didn't praise them either. Just watched from a distance with narrowed eyes, as if trying to see what Kane saw. Cole moved with more precision now. He listened more than he spoke. At night, he studied maps, watched camera angles, plotted his own silent drills in the shadows behind the barracks. Brooke stopped curling her lashes. Before morning PT, her makeup bag stayed zipped. She kept a journal, instead sketching the events of the breach, scribbling questions that buzzed in her skull like wasps. Who trained those men? Why did they want Kane? And why did he fight like a man with nothing to lose? Derek, always the strongest, started teaching others, quietly, respectfully. He'd seen what strength looked like when it meant protection, not dominance. That changed him. One evening, just past lights out, Kane returned. He didn't say anything. Just walked into the training yard, placed a crate in the dirt, and sat, waiting. They saw him from the barracks window. No announcement. No command. Still. Within 5 minutes, 12 recruits joined him. Kane opened the crate. Old gear. Unmarked, faded uniforms, steel knives with worn grips, blank dog tags. "Everything I own," he said. They stared. "Why?" Cole asked. "Because the people who came for me won't stop. Not until they know I'm dead." Derek frowned. "But why come here? Why this base?" Kane looked up. "Because I trained them." The silence was suffocating. Brooke finally spoke. "You built them." "I built monsters," Kane said. "And now they hunt their maker. They're selling their skills to the highest bidder black market contracts, shadow governments, coups. And they know where to find you," Cole said quietly. Kane nodded. "Fort Lincoln is no longer a base. It's bait." No one moved. Then Kane's voice dropped. "That's why I need you. Not the version the military made. Not what they stamped out in training. I need the version that broke protocol to save lives. That ran into gunfire because you believed in something. That's the version they'll never expect." Derek stepped forward. "You want us to fight them?" "No," Kane said. "I want you to beat them." The next 6 weeks were unlike anything in the manual. They trained before sunrise, after curfew, in abandoned sections of the base that even instructors didn't bother checking. Kane taught them angles, timing, intention. How to see a fight before it began. How to end it before it escalated. Not just with weapons, but with silence, deception, control. He broke them, then rebuilt them. One night, after a particularly brutal run through simulated hostage extraction, Brooke collapsed on the gravel, gasping. Kane crouched beside her. "You quit?" She looked up, eyes burning. "I hurt," he nodded. "Good." Then stood and walked away. She got back up. They didn't know exactly when it shifted, but one morning, something snapped into place. They moved like a unit. Covered each other instinctively. Spoke less. Trusted more. Even Monroe noticed. "What the hell are you all on?" he muttered one morning, watching them finish the obstacle course in record time. No one answered. Kane watched from a rooftop. Then the message came. A simple envelope. No return address. Inside, one Polaroid. A black SUV outside the gates. Inside a man with a scar over his right eye. Kane stared at the photo for a long time. Then he turned it over. 4 words were scratched on the back. "See you at midnight." He didn't tell the commander. Didn't alert base security. He went to the training yard. Placed the photo on the crate. Brooke picked it up first. Her eyes narrowed. "Is that who I think it is?" Kane nodded. Cole looked at him. "What's the plan?" Kane's voice was low level. "No more hiding. No more ghosts. This time, we take the fight to them." The team exchanged glances. No one spoke. No one needed to. They knew who they were now. Not recruits, not pawns, and not afraid. War was coming, and they would be ready.